Welcome to A Round of Paws, where we discuss a potpourri of canine topics. You're sure to find something to make your ears perk up, just like your pooch. Your host and canine instructor, Janine Smith, educates both dogs and humans. Today's podcast barks about how to stop the Droopy Poopies, otherwise known as the dreaded doggy diarrhea.
A round of applause to you for checking out this podcast on how to stop the droopy poopies or doggy diarrhea. Oh no, your puppy has got the dreaded droopy poopies. We are talking smelly, brown, watery stools. Your poor puppy is in such distress, and you, unfortunately, are up all night with that poor dog. So what do? When do you know when you need to call your vet? Can you deal with the droopy poopies without a vet? The answer is yes. It's a matter of time before you have to deal with this very common but very worrisome ailment. Sometimes it hits you right off the rip when you've got a puppy. Sometimes it isn't until there's some issue in your dog's life. Maybe they ate something or they got stressed, but it'll happen. So the first thing is to stop the regular diet. If your dog's on kibble or raw or whatever, go ahead and stop that. You need to reset the dog's stomach. Now, some vets will tell you that for dogs, they want you to give them nothing for 12 to 24 hours. And I understand that. They're trying to reset the stomach of the dog. Hard for me to do that just because I have multiple dogs. I have 4 of them. And so if I'm feeding 3 of them and one of them is looking at me saying, Mom, you forgot I have no food and I'm hungry. So I do end up feeding them something. And let me tell you what I do. First of all, though, I want you to think small meals. Because again, this stomach is really upset. So 4 to 5 small meals a day, small amounts. The best luck I've had is organic canned pumpkin and bone broth. So again, you can use real pumpkin, but you have to boil it. Organic canned pumpkin, obviously just the plain pumpkin, not something that you would use for pumpkin pie. And bone broth, could be chicken, could be beef, doesn't seem to really matter. But small amounts of that for 12 to 24 hours. I would probably start with 2 tablespoons of pumpkin to a half a cup of bone broth and do that at least for 12 hours and then assess and see where I'm at with that dog. Something else I use for dogs, not so much for puppies, because I'm very careful about all the different things you kind of introduce to a puppy's gastrointestinal system, which is still developing. But I use something called slippery elm. This comes from the slippery elm tree. And it's used for people as well as for dogs. And it coats and soothes the mouth, throat, stomach, and intestines. It also can relieve inflammation. So that can really also help move things along in the right way. Hopefully, you're going to have some really good success with the pumpkin and the bone broth. Again, if 12 hours isn't enough, keep it going for another 12 hours and assess again. You may have to do it for a couple days. It just depends on how bad your dog or puppy's stomach was upset. Then you would slowly reintroduce normal food. But I would still continue with the pumpkin and the bone broth, or I would start with an intermediate step, which is kind of what the vets will talk about. Because that's typically when you call them and say, my dog's got diarrhea, what do I do? Is they'll say, put them on chicken and rice, boiled chicken and rice. And I've done that. And with some dogs, I have some luck. But the chicken and rice doesn't seem to work as well for me as small pastas and well-drained, boiled, high-quality ground beef. And I can't tell you why. Because according to what I've read, and according to what vets say, the beef is, it's richer and the chicken's easier for the dogs to digest. But I don't know. At least maybe for golden retrievers, they may be very beef happy. I don't know. For adult dogs, the pasta definitely seems to work better, and then rice. And for puppies as well. I have to say, though, it depends on the dog, because for one of my dogs, Jazz, the beef and rice was the ticket. But for Orvie, my little puppy, beef and pasta was a ticket. The common pitfall, and I have been definitely someone who did this too, is I see that the dog is doing better. I'm seeing those beautiful, nice, firm, brown stools and thinking, oh, thank heavens we got through that. And then I kind of go back to the normal food and I do it within 24 to 48 hours. Well, that's then come back to not do a good job for me because the dog's stomach gets upset again. So I've learned I really, really have to take it slowly when I reintroduce their normal food. I start with maybe an eighth of a cup of their normal kibble, and I do that for 1 or 2 days. And again, I assess. If starting the kibble, I'm seeing that the stools are getting softer again, I know I've pushed it. So I've got to get off it again completely and go back to at least the beef and the pasta. It really depends on the reason why your puppy or dog had diarrhea and how severe it is and how long those gastrointestinal issues have been going on. The process of getting back onto the normal food is a minimum of 4 days, guys, but it could take easily up to 2 weeks. And for some dogs like Orvie, it might take longer than 2 weeks. I do look for the cause of why I think the dog came up with the droopy poopies. Was it eating nature? Eating leaves, bark, mulch? Is the dog stressed? Did I do something really different to the dog? Was it taken somewhere it's never been before? Did I overdo something? Is there a food allergy? Is this a dog who might be sensitive to chicken or beef or seafood? If you've tried this and you've really followed this and you've done the small meals and you've really just introduced things very, very slowly to your puppies or your dogs and you're not seeing anything looking better. If you hear any noise in the background, we're in California right now. We have this huge storm, so it is just pouring outside. I'm sitting here in my den with my 4 dogs hanging out around me. Let's see, where was I with this? So you need to try to figure out why your dog had the doggy diarrhea. And if you can't tell, or if there's no success, your dog still has this diarrhea, then you need to take a fecal or a stool sample to your vet. You need to rule out parasites and bacteria because that's an easier fix where the dog can get a medication and that should help the issue. When I would not wait, when I would get to the vet ASAP, like within 12 hours maximum, is if I'm looking at other symptoms besides diarrhea. Is my dog vomiting? Maybe vomiting once, not a big deal. Vomiting twice, okay, now I'm really on alert. Vomiting 3 times, we're off to the vet. Is my dog lethargic, just sleepy and out of it and doesn't want to move? Oh yeah, we're gone immediately. Or is the dog in distress? Does the dog seem like it can't get comfortable? It's in pain, it's whimpering. We're immediately gone to the vet. It's possible with diarrhea, you might be looking at an obstruction, especially with a puppy, where they ate something that you're not aware of and it's kind of stuck in there. Again, only the vet's going to be able to help you with that. Diarrhea with puppies. Oh boy, so many of us have been there. And being a breeder, I've talked to a lot of my families who had issues with their puppies with diarrhea. So it's very, very common. And I don't want you to stress out if your dog has diarrhea. Like I said, it happens to all dogs at some point in their lives. But for puppies, if they have diarrhea, it's a concern because they're just little peanuts and they don't have a lot of reserves there. So you've got to watch for dehydration and for weight loss. So Orvie, our youngest, who is an 8-month-old puppy now, but he was one of Kimmy's puppies from the litter that we had this summer. So I raised him on, after his mom's milk, on a puppy kibble that's extremely well known and big national brand, highly recommended by many vets. But I don't think it settled well for him. Not only did it not settle well for him, but for 4 of his siblings and for his mother, because the mother dog is also on the puppy kibble so that it's not a big switch for the puppies. Plus, she needs that extra fat and nutrients. But boy, even Kimmy, the mommy dog, had a lot of diarrhea, and I just didn't put the pieces together. I just didn't think it could possibly be this kibble that was so well renowned and thought of by these vets. And it wasn't until after Orvie went home with 4 of his other siblings, and I'm hearing from people saying, hey, my dog's got some problems here on this kibble. What is going on? So I think all of them are definitely off that particular kibble. So with Orvie, we took him off the kibble. We did do the pumpkin and the bone broth, and it helped settle his tummy, and he started to get better. We did that for probably 3 days. He was a tough one. And then we started to do some things that the vets had told me to try, like the chicken and rice. Yeah, boom, right back to horrible diarrhea. So now we're back again to the pumpkin and the bone broth and trying to build back up. And the vet said, try cottage cheese. Yep, boom, back to terrible droopy poopies. And so we're back to the pumpkin and the bone broth again. And then my husband and I finally put our heads together and said, okay, the normal things don't seem to be working for this little guy. What do you think we should try? And we decided to try beef and pasta, even though vets will tell you don't go with beef because it tends to be higher in fat and richer for the dogs. But for Orvie, it was just a ticket. His stools became really, really great on the beef and the pasta. And so we kept him on there for a while, but yes, unfortunately, Miss Impatient here decided, okay, he's doing so great. Let's go back and try the kibble. And at this point, I can't remember if it was the original kibble because I don't know if I'd figured out yet that the kibble was really not good. But whatever kibble we tried him on, boom, right back to the droopy poopies. So then we're back to square one again. And we're back to the pumpkin and the broth. And then back to the beef and the pasta. And then at that point, I'm sure I did change the kibble. But I was going quickly, too much for this little guy. So I was rushing back to his normal food, probably within 48 hours. And then he would just go right back to square one. So I realized I really needed to slow down and to give him lots and lots of time to really settle on the beef and pasta before I introduced any kibble whatsoever. And then to take it super slowly, like take weeks to introduce the kibble. He's still not a great kibble guy, I gotta admit it. I mean, we're on our 4th kibble. The other 3 dogs are doing just fine. But Orvie, as of this point, is back on beef and pasta. And we're assessing whether or not I'm going to put him back on kibble at all. I have another podcast about the holy grail of healthy food for dogs. It is tricky to find something that works for 4 of my golden retrievers where they're all happy and I feel that I'm giving them a really good nutritional basis and I'm not slaving in the kitchen for 6 hours a day making them homemade food. That's a good podcast. I recommend you guys check it out and listen to it. So eventually we got little Orvie to start developing and to be better, but he is still a work in progress. I would say he's healthy and super athletic, but he's still a little bit on the smaller side for his age. We had another dog, Rosie. Rosie is 2. She's a golden retriever, but she also was a tricky little puppy. I mean, it just seemed like for no reason whatsoever, she would end up getting the droopy poopies when she was younger. And a lot of times it was not that I changed her food or that I did anything, but I don't know, she did eat a lot of nature. I mean, she's definitely a dog who eats lots of stuff. But we did finally realize that with her, part of the issue was a food sensitivity. I was feeding them salmon oil, and the kibble they were on at that point also had different fish in it. And we did finally figure out through trial and error in time that she's definitely got sensitivity to seafood. So once we stopped that, she seemed to really perk up, and she's much better now. you kind of have to be a detective at times. I mean, each dog, just like if you're a parent of kids, is a little bit different. But I have found for pretty much all puppies and dogs that the broth and the pumpkin is just a great first step. And then slowly either go back to their original food or to do that intermediate step of bland diet, beef pasta, chicken pasta, rice if you really want to try it. But I really did find rice seems to be harder for dogs to digest. I just made some homemade food for my dogs, and I saw just a lot of rice in their stools. So I was like, yep, that's not it. We're not going to be doing a lot of rice with these dogs. Always look at your dog's stools. I know that sounds kind of weird, but it is the best way for you to see if your dog is healthy or if something is wrong with your furry friend. So I check those out every day. And it is trickier when you have 4 dogs because you have to kind of figure out, okay, I think that's this dog's or this dog's. And that's one reason why I love to take them on walks, because then I can actually see whose output goes to which puppy. But I don't want you to panic. I know that if you follow these simple steps, you would be able to cure the droopy poopies. Thanks for taking the time to listen to this podcast. Paws up to you. Woof, woof.
Thanks for joining us for another episode of A Round of Paws, produced by EduPups. You can join the EduPups community by checking out blog posts at edupups.com. Find us on social media too. We're at EduPups4 on Instagram, at EduPups on Facebook, YouTube, and TikTok. You can write Janine at edupups.com. She would positively love to hear from you. A Round of Paws is copyright 2023 EduPups LLC. Let's keep those tails wagging.